Welcome to Echo Forge, dark fantasy and sci-fi stories from the edges of forgotten worlds. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next vision. Now, let's step through the gate.
The Dark of Space, Part 6. The visions closed in, consuming him, as the last echoes of the entity filled the ship. Distant stars hung like broken chandeliers in the dark expanse beyond the viewport, casting long shadows across the control room as the explorer moved through it with a hurried, distracted grace. His hands, encased in thick gloves, pounded frantic commands into the console as erratic sensor data flooded the screens. A low, distorted hum vibrated the space around him, echoing off cold metal surfaces and seeping into his thoughts. Lights flickered, red, orange, alarming, as he clutched the dashboard and felt the chill of impending catastrophe in every shudder of the ship. Then came the sudden storm of sounds and images, flashing across the monitor with invasive insistence, filling the room with the phantom presence of something that watched from the edges of reality. The vessel's passage may draw unwanted attention from other cosmic forces, the disembodied voice warned, pulling him into a decision he wasn't ready to make. He hesitated, staring at the swarm of numbers that buzzed across the console. His fingers, poised over the keys, twitched with uncertainty. Data blurred into abstract patterns, erratic and unreadable, a dance of chaos that refused to be tamed. The explorer's breath came in short, ragged bursts as he tried to make sense of the storm. Each flicker of the lights, each shift of the ship's frame, fed into a mounting panic that crept through his veins like ice. "What am I missing?" he muttered, his voice nearly swallowed by the persistent hum that saturated the air. The entity's presence clung to the edges of perception, more felt than seen, an oppressive awareness that pressed in on him from all sides. The explorer blinked, wiping sweat from his eyes as he focused on the screens. Images flashed with a relentless rhythm, each one more vivid, more insistent than the last. Was that a corridor, twisted and unfamiliar? Was that his own face, gaunt and ghostly? They seemed drawn from memories he couldn't fully grasp, a montage of familiarity and alienation that left him dizzy and disoriented. The entity's voice, resonant and jarring, cut through the jumble. "Other forces may see you as a threat." He clutched the console, trying to steady himself against the weight of the warning. His mind spun, calculations and uncertainties tangling together in a web of fear and determination. Should he push deeper, risk the wrath of these cosmic forces, or should he pull back, retreat to the safety of the void? The explorer swallowed hard, turning his attention to the blinking interface that pulsed with an almost mocking regularity. His hands hovered over the controls, caught in the paralysis of indecision. "Rapid exit now," he barked, desperation bleeding into his words. The ship's AI responded with the clinical detachment of a machine, untroubled by the specter of annihilation. Probability of safe exit decreasing. Recommend immediate decision. He felt the tremor in his hands grow, a betrayal of nerves that he couldn't quite suppress. "Hold position or risk it all," he demanded, his voice rising to match the fevered pitch of the alarms. Again, the AI's calm analysis clashed with his rising panic. "Other forces remain undetected. Remaining may provoke interaction." The warnings buzzed in his ears, loud and insistent, a symphony of technological distress that drowned out reason. He froze, caught in the static-laden pause between action and inertia. The ship shuddered violently, throwing him against the console as lights dimmed to a flickering twilight. The physical impact jarred his thoughts, and he caught himself with gloved fingers that trembled from more than just the cold. He glanced at the displays, a last-ditch effort to find clarity amidst the chaos. They offered no comfort, only a continuation of the glitchy, unreadable barrage. A flash of heat ran through him, anger and frustration born of helplessness. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted to no one in particular, to everything at once. The room felt like it was closing in, walls pushing against him with the inevitability of failure. Each failed system, each garbled readout added weight to his already heavy burden. In the growing dimness, he sensed the entity's influence like a breath on the back of his neck. It permeated the air with intangible certainty, refusing to let him ignore its warnings. The images returned with renewed vigor, overlapping his own perceptions until it was impossible to tell where his reality ended and the entity's projection began. He saw the ship again, saw it torn open by impossible forces, a vision so stark it pulled a gasp from his throat. "Your presence here is noticed," the voice stated, with an authority that left little room for doubt. The explorer gritted his teeth, wrestling with the choice that loomed over him like a storm on the verge of breaking. If he stayed, he could lose everything. If he left, it might already be too late. His mind was a frantic whirlpool of what-ifs and maybe-nots, and he felt himself being sucked deeper into its relentless spin. He turned back to the console, resolve wavering in the flickering glow of malfunctioning circuits. Every part of him screamed for resolution, for action, for some decisive move that would break the paralysis and tip the scales. But the entity's ominous warning reverberated in his skull, an echo that refused to die down. The gravity of his predicament crushed him with all the force of the anomaly that pulled at the ship's fragile hull. The ship lurched forward like a beast struggling against chains, shaking with a violence that rattled the explorer to his core. He made the decision, hasty and absolute, switching to manual override as the anomaly's pull grew fierce and immediate. His commands ricocheted off the metal walls, harsh and urgent, a series of actions that blurred desperation with technical precision. Power diverted, thrust vectors recalibrated, alarms screamed in the thin air, and the room filled with the strobe-light chaos of rapidly failing systems. The entity's projections danced like specters around him, an audience of shadows to his resolve. "I'm not turning back. I push through," he yelled. A declaration to both himself and the ghostly presence that guided him. Engage rapid thrust now. His hands gripped the throttle, knuckles white beneath the gloves, sweat mingling with the chill that clung to him like a second skin. He stared into the looming abyss, unflinching as ship and man hurtled toward an uncertain, perilous fate. The explorer moved with fierce intention, each action a blow against the cosmic forces that threatened to consume him. His breath came in sharp gasps, synchronizing with the mechanical symphony of a ship pushed beyond its limits. He felt the controls buck beneath his grip, a wild animal that needed taming. The anomaly loomed, its gravitational pull a constant gnawing presence that tore at the ship's hull with spectral fingers. His resolve wavered for only a moment, lost in the flash of a monitor that blinked in rapid succession. Fail, fail, fail. Dread tinged his determination, a subtle undertone that hummed along with the failing circuits. The space around him twisted with the force of the anomaly, bending reality until it felt like the universe itself was rebelling against his intrusion. He bit back the fear, forcing it into submission as he diverted power from secondary systems, rerouting every ounce of energy into the straining engines. The walls of the cramped bridge seemed to close in, compressing the air until every breath was a battle. He thrived on it, this collision of desperation and hope, letting it fuel his actions as he tightened his focus. Outside the viewport, space stretched and warped, an impossible tableau that threatened to swallow him whole. He watched it with a fierce intensity, looking for any sign of weakness in the cosmic forces that conspired against him. There was none, only the vast, impersonal might of the anomaly, unyielding and implacable. It dared him to continue, to press forward against its formidable presence. He accepted the challenge, fingers flying across the console as he overrode the safeties that stood between him and the razor's edge of oblivion. In the midst of it all, the entity remained a constant, disconcerting guide. Its spectral projections filled the space with an ominous beauty, casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to breathe with the life of their own. The explorer glimpsed himself within them. An echo, a phantom, a silhouette stretched thin by cosmic uncertainty. The voice returned, unmistakable and unrelenting. "Others may retaliate." The warning mingled with the cacophony of alarms, embedding itself in the marrow of his bones. He felt it, even as he refused to heed it, a part of him that whispered danger with every breath. Reality blurred, each second a drawn-out eternity of uncertainty. The ship groaned beneath him, protesting the strain with shudders that shook his very core. The explorer's vision narrowed to the control panel, watching as data flickered and faded, an ebb and flow of information that defied prediction. His pulse echoed the urgent rhythm, a drumbeat of adrenaline that pushed him toward the brink. "I'm not turning back. I push through," he shouted, each word a vow, a promise that he hurled against the coming storm. His hands were steady on the controls, even as his heart raced with the frenetic energy of a man who had no choice but to succeed. He felt the presence of the entity, close and intimate, a spectator to his perilous gamble. It watched him, unseen and all-knowing, a judge and a prophet whose intentions remained obscured by the veil of its ancient existence. The explorer forced air into his lungs, a rhythm to counter the chaos that reigned around him, each breath a statement, each heartbeat a rebellion against the inevitable. He sensed the end, the culmination of his resolve drawing near as the ship hurtled into the mouth of the unknown. Lights blinked their protest, a staccato insistence that reverberated through the confined space. His focus remained unbroken, a testament to a will that refused to bend. He recalibrated the thrust vectors with the precision of a surgeon, cutting through the chaos with deft, assured movements. His voice rang out again, clear and unwavering in the dim, flickering light. "Engage rapid thrust now." He pressed forward, pushing the engines to their final, desperate limit. Every system screamed its distress, a chorus of malfunction that threatened to drown out his resolve. But he remained, an anchor amidst the uncertainty, unwilling to relinquish his hold on the fragile strands of survival. The chill of space bled through the walls, creeping into his thoughts, but he pushed it aside with grim determination. The entity's projections loomed larger, encircling him with their haunting inevitability. He felt their pull, the seductive allure of surrender, but he resisted with a tenacity that surprised even himself. He was so close now, so impossibly close to the breaking point. There was no room for doubt, no space for anything but the singularity of his intent. And then the moment stretched, time elongating to accommodate the enormity of what lay ahead. Ship and man faced the brink, suspended in the terrible beauty of an uncertain future. His final adjustments were a blur, a last act of defiance against a universe that demanded his retreat. He dared it to stop him, eyes locked on the void as he threw himself headlong into the abyss. The control room flared with angry red lights and twisted shadows, crowded with the strained noise of metal and wire. The explorer's hand danced across the flickering displays, directing a frantic plan of escape even as the alien presence manifested around him, sudden and alarming along the bulkheads. One moment the presence shrieked and wailed, warning, guiding. The next it flashed like gunfire inside his head, flooding his vision and bleeding images into reality. Outside the view screen, cosmic forces pulsed and threatened to devour him, flashing wild, incomprehensible events as the ship lurched under their grasp. He switched panels, ignored the chaos, issued short commands as the entity pushed and pulled the controls to match his pace. "Hold steady," he barked as he struggled to stay upright. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed at him from every corner, urging him to eject, to get out while he could. He shook his head, focused on the surging images of doom and loss. The readouts flared with disaster and then vanished, left him blinking after them like a man trying to remember the details of a nightmare. Another wave of invasive imagery assaulted him. This one had gravity, mass, stars collapsing, consuming. Burning bright before the dark. "It's coming," the projection shrieked. "It's coming." He winced, teeth clenched tight. "Damn it, I know." He was sure they would rip the ship apart before the anomaly did. Already the engines whined and the hull screamed as if they'd lost all nerve, as if they'd given in to the vision and left him alone to face the cataclysm. He stayed focused. The displays flickered as a series of catastrophic warnings scrolled past. Failed integrity, failed systems, failed survival, failed, failed, failed. He moved quickly, sweeping the warnings aside, pulling other displays into view. The tangled mess of noise and image thinned as the entity regrouped for another assault. It faded like breath from glass, regrouping on another surface. More projections flickered into his mind, stretching his sanity. They did not give him pause. Nothing did yet. The anomaly's hold was the tightest grip of all. As they tried to shake it, the walls and hull groaned like they might pull apart at the seams. He put a calloused palm to the nearest surface, felt the cold creep through, let it steel his resolve. "We're getting out," he promised through the wail of alarms. He slammed a fist against another panel. More lights came to life. Displays sparked, died, shot back to life in a fresh tangle of commands and symbols. Another projection. In the thick of the escape attempt, an asteroid belt crowded the path, blocking them in. The ship's control systems were slow to respond, cold and stubborn as a corpse. The explorer issued a sharp breath. It came through his teeth in a thin hiss. He kept to his course, tried to focus. One panel grew hot, seared his hands, and sent a pungent plastic smell across the room. "Help me," he demanded, knowing the entity would find a way to understand. His voice must have reached it through the static, reached it through the wall of imagery. The entire ship flared white, like someone had set off an explosive inside the hold. "It is near," the entity urged, muting the other alarms, giving the explorer room to breathe. "It is near." "Go faster," he said. "Faster, faster," went the warnings. Blinding colors arced through the room, through his mind. The ship dipped, dropped out from under him as if he'd lost the controls completely, but still he pushed. He pushed and pulled, synced his movements with the invasive projections. Together they tried. Together they would make it, or they would not. The space outside the view screen moved as if it were alive, threatening to consume everything in reach. Cosmic forces beyond his understanding bent and pulsed. Lights bloomed in the thick of it, disastrous and chaotic. Entire galaxies ripped apart and bled into each other in a frenzied rush toward oblivion. Everything blurred, everything demanded his attention, the entire universe folded and writhed. Inside, things were worse. Inside, he had an alien's warning screeching through his head, chasing through the tangled mess of thought and panic and sheer determination. Not much longer, he told himself, told the entity, told anyone who might listen. Panels shot bright and dim in the aftermath of his desperate inputs. He moved quickly, precisely, refused to let go. His training, his time at the academy, had prepared him for this, hadn't it? The last one left had to be the strongest, the most certain. A thin line of sweat blurred his vision. He swiped it away, only to find more replacing it. Behind the physical control panels, new projections made themselves known. Memory took the form of missiles, chasing him, hunting him, hungry and unyielding. Escapes that he'd made but should not have. Moments he'd lived through but never really left behind. They were on top of him, and then the ship lurched away. "Faster," he repeated. "Move, damn it, move." The controls did not obey. The entity held its ground, unleashed more flickering images, more terror. Its urgency slammed against his skull and made everything too loud, too much to withstand. But it also pulled him back to himself, brought him back to the moment. The images played faster, the pacing more insistent. Near, near, they insisted, close. The panels blurred in time with his pulse. As the explorer fought to stay in command, more projections swam to the surface of his consciousness, crowding him, matching him. In the bulkheads, in the cold press of air, the images formed. "Get out," the presence shrieked. They pushed, he pushed back. They rode the edge of the event horizon. The view screen bled with color and light and destruction. The entire ship spun and bucked, tried to throw him free, tried to throw them all free. "Almost," he said, "almost." Almost there, the presence shrieked. Near, near. It all blinked out. The control room steadied. The lights dimmed to a low, throbbing pulse, and just as quickly, just as alarmingly, it all blinked back into life. But the pressure had shifted. The displays did not flicker this time. The controls did not burn under his touch. The entity's insistence blared a last warning, collapsing, collapsing. Its final cries rang out, vibrant in his skull and his perception before becoming shadows, trailing off like an echo through empty space. The explorer kept his ground, kept his hands on the now calm inputs, while the ship drifted in a new, more predictable chaos. "Made it," he said. He looked around, blinked a few times to make sure he wasn't imagining it. Everything in reach hummed with energy. The soft patter of sparking wires sounded far away and without consequence. He shifted his focus to the view screen. With the threat of the entity gone, the cosmic forces displayed beyond the glass took on an even, pulsing rhythm. Familiar stars emerged from the center, drifting slow but steady toward him. The explorer took in the pace of it, the soft life, and nodded. We made it. Outside, the anomaly contracted, flared, vanished from sight. The explorer slumped against the console, cold and numbed, as the ship floated free from the anomaly's grip. Everything felt empty. Without the entity crowding him, without its invasive cries filling his thoughts, he did not know what was left, did not know how to call his mind his own. He panted, trying to catch the rhythm of his breath, blinking at the soft view screen and the familiar stars that crawled across it. A slow, unsteady grin broke across his face, the distant white light, the infinite absence of sound. All of it felt new, fragile, a thin skin he did not dare break. Not yet. His breath came in quick white bursts, fogging the air like it hadn't quite decided to leave him alone, like he hadn't quite made it back to himself. He leaned against the console, let it steady him, let the chilled metal seep into his bones and give him new life. "This is it," he said, but his voice was hollow, unbelieving. The words slipped from his mouth and made no sense against the still air. The sight of the view screen had him dizzy. There were no wild colors, no universe-threatening disasters, just stars, bright and warm and unimaginably far away. He didn't dare look anywhere else. He let the stars have his focus. He let them pull him in like gravity. There was a truth to them. A way back to himself, maybe. Each blink of the distant suns brought a little more warmth to his voice, a little more certainty. He tried to piece it all together, find a way to move beyond breath and the shock of cold metal. "This is what?" he asked, now waiting for the answer, now sure it was on the tip of his tongue. It's the nothingness that had been filled. It's the shadows, the half-life, the control room without the screams, without the flood of color and image and sound. It was too big, too full of space. He tried not to let that bother him. He let his head fall back against the console, let his eyes drift to the cramped ceiling. If he was not careful, he would slip away again, would drift like debris, meaningless and spent. The silence thundered at him. The solitude of the ship was alive and pulsing with his every breath. He needed to fill it before something else did. "Everything, it's everything," he told himself. The stars made their way across the view screen, old travelers that seemed just as weary as he was. He watched them and knew they would not leave, knew they were nothing like the fickle entity that abandoned him. His fingers moved along the nearest panel, moved and worked the way his mind did. It was cold at first, but he felt them warming to it. The chill was replaced with an urgency he'd almost forgotten. "I've got it," he said. He could only be sure of his voice if he heard it. The silence that wrapped around it, made it foreign, was all in his head, all in his memory. His mouth curled up again. A soft laugh left him, soft and surprised and alive. He'd made it, after all. He tapped a few more controls and adjusted the frequency, made a transmission that carried through space and emptiness. "This is," he paused, caught in the strange beauty of his own name, "the explorer from deep space." Each word came slow, deliberate. It hung between him and the receiver, fragile as starlight. The warning lights continued to pulse, red and strong and utterly predictable. They did not surprise him this time, did not demand his attention, only floated in the thin space between him and the view screen, between him and the truth of it. "Heed this warning," he continued, more sure of himself now, more sure of the silence. His voice strained against it, and he let it all echo off the walls and fill the space where the entity had lived. Let it ring inside his skull, bouncing between his thoughts, cutting clean across the cramped and quiet control room. Things out here are not what they seem. Not at all what they seem. His entire body felt the strength of it. His entire mind swam with the empty space, the vast cold, the deceptive stars. This is no frontier for man. He faltered, his voice a flicker against the uncertainty. Was he sure? How did he know, without the entity pressing against him, without its vivid warnings and colors? Maybe he did not know anything. Maybe this was the strangest communication of all, a blank that said more than he could imagine. No frontier, he thought, no limits, no way to control or understand. This is another hesitation, another moment to regroup, to feel out his own thoughts. It's suicide. He shuddered, feeling the threat of it close, feeling the cold air. How had the entity said it? How had it made him listen? It was better without the words, better with colors and images and sounds. He knew it then, he knew everything. Now there was a chance he knew nothing at all. Still, the message had to be sent. He straightened himself against the console, felt the metal, steady and true. The trickle of doubt receded. It would take more than this to drown him, to turn him inside out. He turned to the control panel again. Its soft blinking, the low bass hum of damaged systems, reminded him he was not entirely alone. He had the warmth of the engines, the slow, sure grind of machinery. Even the fading sense of the entity, lost in memory, ghosted on the edges of his mind. This is nothing, he thought. I'm still alive. This is nothing, he thought. I have survived. He opened his mouth and let his breath spill out, untamed and vivid as any projection. It echoed across the room, warming as it traveled. It took on new life, new certainty. Humanity is not ready for this. More steady, more clear. Heed this warning. He took his time. Let it spool out. Let it fill the empty ship. Do not follow. The transmission stretched through the entire vessel, filled every possible space, every possibility of silence. It will not wait. His lips, his thoughts, found a rhythm they could keep to. They did not stutter or shy away. Anomalies like you couldn't understand. His eyes moved to the view screen, moved to the stars, the brightness. There were no limits, just as the entity had warned. He embraced the thought of it. Listen well. And then a little stronger. Then a little louder. It will not wait. He let the panels hum, let them have the last word as the transmission spun out and disappeared into the white light of space.
Thanks for watching Echo Forge. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe so the next tale finds you. Share this with someone who loves dark fantasy or twisted sci-fi, and I'll see you in the next world.